Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the guy who is too tired to get really obnoxious here. Let's just get into it. I'm here to preview UFC 315 Muhammad versus Della Maddalena. Okay, opening up the card, we have Bezkat Almakhan taking on Brad Katona. My prediction here is Bezkat wins, and I've got him winning by decision. And I'm not too confident in that prediction at all. I do think Brad is a live dog in this fight just because I trust Brad's durability against just about anybody, but I think he'll be able to stand up to the danger of Bezcott in the first place. And secondly, Brad Katona is one hell of a point fighter. He's a really tough guy to dominate. Not saying he always runs away with it on the scorecards either. He's usually good at edging it out at the UFC level. But he's definitely got a winning decision record. And even though he's lost a bit of that momentum recently with some tough decision losses, especially against Jean Matsumoto, he's still a really seasoned guy who's well accustomed to fighting 15 hard minutes at the UFC level. And even though Bezkat Almakhan has a deeper resume than meets the eye, which I'll get to, Brad Katona is still the more reliable point fighter. But the reason I'm picking Bezkat is because, again, he does have more than meets the eye. He's got a deep amateur or exhibition record. I don't know how to read his record. And a lot of these fights I can't see anyway. But he's still been the distance a lot more than the one time in victory in his professional career. He's got an extensive amateur or exhibition record, which coincided with his professional record. So again, I don't know how the fuck these fights are booked or whatever. But while he was a pro, he did get an exhibition 15-minute decision victory over Sergey Morozov. I don't know if you remember him, but he was in the UFC up until a few years ago. Guy's a very good fighter, and that's just one of those invisible victories for Bezkat Almakhan. He's also got some other solid decision victories. The point is he's been the distance in victory more than that other one fight on his professional record. But he's also got other wins that mean something. Down the stretch, deep arm bars and knee bars over guys that have turned into solid professional fighters in that region anyway. So yeah, it's definitely better than it looks, the depth of his resume. And also, even if you were to just look at his pro record, it's not like he's steamrolling all of his finishes. By the way, I should have mentioned he's got 10 finishes and his 11 victories. But they're not all just in round one. He's fought down the stretch plenty of times, a couple of round three finishes, even round two, as he's moved up in competition throughout the years. And I think this guy is definitely here to stay. I think he's going to be an above average UFC fighter, and he would have to be to beat Brad Katona in his first UFC victory. Brad Katona is a two-time Ultimate Fighter winner, and I think he won Iron Chef or something as well. But the point is, he's got a deep resume, and on those Ultimate Fighters shows, he's got plenty of victories that mean a lot and are invisible, just like the Sergey Morozov fight for Bezkat. Brad Katona's beaten Timur Valiev and Kyler Phillips and whoever else. Bryce Mitchell submitted him. So he's definitely been there and done that. And it wouldn't surprise me if Brad was able to shut down Bezkat. I think his best course of action would be getting more aggressive than he's used to being with his strikes, trusting his durability, and getting on top of Bezkat. Trying to get on top of him anyway. But Brad Katona is a formidable wrestler and grappler himself, even though he doesn't always fight like that. And I think mixing it up and crowding Bezkat is the way to go. And that might be what I look to bet on. I haven't bet on this yet. Right now, it's just the money line and the over-under. I do think it goes the distance. It's got Brad Katona there. But look, one guy has been finished between the two, and it was Bezkat. He was guillotined by this guy, Sultan Jabekachab or whatever. But this guy's a solid fighter, even though he's not on the UFC's radar. Really good fighter, and he was able to get him out of there with a guillotine in round two. Brad Katona's got a few submissions, and some of them actually mean something. He's only got like three of them, but They're over solid regional and decent guys. And if Brad Katona is truly next leveling Bezkat Almakhan, maybe there's something there where he can get some sort of rare finish. But I probably shouldn't have wasted 30 seconds just talking about that because, again, it is Brad Katona. I think Brad Katona is pretty much do or die by decision, win or lose by decision. He's incredibly durable in an MMA sense, tough to dominate on the ground as well, tough to go through on the ground. And standing up, he is just not so dangerous. He's just not dangerous at all. He's got one TKO to his name. So Brad Katona is a pretty reliable fighter to take you to the scorecards, whether he wins or loses. So yeah, I'm going with Bezcott. I think he'll be able to handle himself for 15 minutes. I envision him being sharper than Brad Katona and maybe scaring some of that volume out of Brad with Bezcott's more dangerous strikes. Guy throws with ferocity. I mean, he did knock down Umar technically, even though I got to be honest, I still don't know what the fuck happened there. I rewatched the fight. But I think he's a reliable guy who's here to stay. And even if he loses this fight, I think he's still going to be here to stay in the UFC. And he's going to definitely rise to be an above average fighter at the very least. I'm going with Bezcott here. I'm probably not going to bet on him. Maybe I'll look for a decision prop or the points. I should probably just play the over, but it's not a pretty line. So yeah, right now I'm staying away from this, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see this one. Next up, we have Daniel Santos versus Zhang Yang Li. My prediction for this fight is Zhang Yang Li wins, and I'm going to take him winning by decision. And the basis for the prediction is I know he's the bigger man, and I think that'll be the difference ultimately. On the feet, I think it can help him out with his range, and on the ground, certainly, if he gets on top of Santos, it can help him out. And also, I would think Zhang Young Lee's in better shape. I believe he was looking to fight tonight, Saturday night. He was preparing for a fight on this night, whereas Santos was supposed to fight Davy Grant a month ago. So obviously he's not out of shape, but he got sick for that Davy Grant fight, and then the fight was canceled day of, and whatever happened since, I'm sure this matchup is a short notice matchup for him, and he is moving up in weight. This is a 145 fight instead of 135 where he's at. And while that should help him with yet another weight cut and make that easier, once they're in the cage, again, I think size will be the difference. And I've got it being the difference for Zhang Young Lee. But Daniel Santos will give him problems on the feet and on the ground, even giving up height and reach. He's a problem. He's a really dynamic guy. He's a wild guy. And he's definitely solid on the ground. Doesn't have too many submissions, but he's gotten a nice one in his last few fights. And he's definitely got skills down there. But he does have, he has two losses. They're both by decision. He's never been finished. Julio Arce beat Santos in his UFC debut, and he lost a few fights before that to this guy Murad Kalamov in the ACA. The Arce fight was on the feet. I feel like Julio Arce just bypassed all that wild shit and kind of shut him down with fundamentals and just beat him in a kickboxing bout mainly. And the guy Kalamov basically beat him on the ground. Although, I'd say wrestling was the difference there. But Daniel Santos still gave him trouble throughout all three rounds and laced up, I think, a ninja choke in rounds 2 and 3, or it could have been a Darce, but he was threatening him and made him work for all 15 minutes. So no one's ever gone through Daniel Santos. No one's ever made it look easy. And again, no one's ever finished him. And he's definitely a well-rounded guy. But here, I think Zhang Young Lee is well-rounded as well. And even though he was finished and really steamrolled in his last fight against Haider Emil, I think if that's not a major problem moving forward and one that would hit the surface in this fight, I think Jung Young Lee would be able to outpoint him. He's shown he can fight a 15-minute grueling fight at the UFC level. This fight's against Jia Yi and Blake Builder, kind of, even though that wasn't such a grueling fight for him. But I know he's got that 15 minutes of scrap in him. And again, I think he's a well-rounded guy who's a little bit bigger. And he can also make you worry on the ground as well. Got a nice armbar on the road to UFC over a good fighter, Bin Ji, and got that within seconds as well. An armbar from the guard. So he's definitely more well-rounded than meets the eye, just like Santos. But again, I think his size will be there for him. I think on the feet, he's the cleaner striker at range. And of course, he is the rangier striker. So that'll help him not only set up his own attacks, but also give him a few extra inches to set up his defense for the more wild attacks of Daniel Santos. So I think Jung Young Lee will get the better of Santos in a close fight where his size is ultimately the difference. A little bit extra meat on him on the ground, weighing on Santos, and on the feet. He's a formidable striker, but he's got some physical advantages there, and I think it carries him to a victory. I haven't seen Santos finish yet, even though John Castaneda came close. So I'll take him winning by decision. But yeah, the pick is Jung Young Lee. Next up, we have Bruno Silva versus Marc-Andre Barriault. My prediction here is Bruno Silva wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by knockout. And the basis for the prediction is, even though I have no more faith in Bruno Silva at all, I still don't have faith in Marc-Andre Barriault's chin these days. I think it has turned a corner, and I think Bruno Silva's got one thing that's still going for him, and that's his danger, and I'm picking that to be the story of this fight. Marc-Andre Barriault was knocked out 3 times. Chidi Njokuani knocked him out first a few years ago in February in seconds. And then in his last 2 fights, Joe Pyfer knocked him out. Joe Pyfer hits really fucking hard, so that's kind of forgivable. And then Dustin Stoltzfus knocked him out in the last fight, which is not as forgivable. I will say that Marc-Andre Barriault invited a brawl in that fight in those closing moments. For the 10 seconds before the knockout, they were doing a little Max Holloway thing there, Don Fry type of thing, where they were throwing down, and he ended up getting clipped and knocked out. So he definitely put himself at risk, but at the end of the day, it was still Dustin Stoltzfus, who, even though he's underrated as a striker and whatever, his danger is just, it doesn't rate so highly. So I think Marc-Andre Barriault is vulnerable. He can mitigate a lot of that vulnerability by not engaging in a Max Holloway, Don Fry type of brawl, and I think he won't be doing that against Bruno Silva. But I still think Bruno Silva, his danger level or rating or whatever the fuck I was just saying a second ago, it is pretty high. Even if he's weathered and, he's on his way out and he's won 1 fight in the last fucking 12 or whatever it is, I still think Bruno Silva is still very capable of shutting out lights that need shutting. And I do think that's what's going to happen here. If I'm wrong and he doesn't land that kill shot, I've got Marc-Andre Barriault winning. And I'd pick him to win that fight even without the crowd of Canada. But certainly that can only help. But I do think Marc-Andre Barriault out-hustles, outworks, and beats up Bruno Silva for the course of this fight without any kill shots. But again, despite Bruno Silva looking like shit lately and not being able to land that kill shot on guys like Chris Weidman, who have had fragile chins for a decade now, I still think Bruno is that guy that can shut your lights out. So I'm going with Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva by knockout is the pick. He's at plus money and the under is at plus money. And I don't know why I haven't bet on either one of them. I guess I'm waiting for props and whatever, but I'm watching the lines closely. The pick is definitely Bruno by knockout. But yeah, if I'm wrong, I think Marc-Andre Barriault wins. And I should speculate on that because I like to give you a well-rounded breakdown. Marc-Andre Barriault doesn't have the submission prowess to go through Bruno Silva, in my opinion. This is not fucking Jordan Wright here. Bruno Silva's been submitted a bunch, but they're by excellent submission artists. Even if they aren't all world renowned and whatever, they're still good submission artists for MMA fighters. And I don't think Marc-Andre Barriault's in that class. So I would say decision is most likely. Maybe a late TKO. Bruno Silva's never been TKO'd, but if he is truly on his way out, and I know he's got doubts in himself and a bunch of losses stacking up, maybe Barriault can close the show with some sort of finish late. But the pick is Bruno by knockout, and the second pick is Barriault by decision. And again, I don't think he needs help from the crowd to win that decision. I think he would out hustle him, but the crowd doesn't hurt. Next up, we have Ivan Erslan taking on Navajo Stirling. My prediction for this fight is Navajo Stirling wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by knockout. And the basis for the prediction is I don't think he's the most well-rounded guy, but I don't think Ivan Erslan is the guy to exploit his weaknesses on the ground or potential weaknesses. And I think on the feet, he is going to be a half step, if not a full step ahead of Ivan Erslan, which should give him the win on the points on the scorecards and the points battle, but also I think give him the victory with the finish, and that's the prediction. Plus, even though he's got a deeper resume, Ivan Erslan with 14-4 is his record. He has been finished before in MMA. He was submitted and he was knocked out. He was submitted by Thomas Narcoon back in 2020 with a rear naked choke. That guy was definitely a UFC level fighter in years past. And he was knocked out against Rafael Haratic a year and a half ago. And that guy, Haratic, is the guy who put Azamat Bakoyev, finished him with a scarf hold. If you remember Bakoyev from last week, steamrolling Ryan Loder. But yeah, my point is those are forgivable losses for Ivan Erslan. He's definitely got a deeper resume, and he suffered losses because of it. But I still don't trust him overall as an MMA fighter. I don't think he's the most likely grappler, and I don't think he's good enough where if he gets Navajo there, he's going to be able to run through him or really exploit him. I think this will be largely contested on the feet. I think Navajo is going to be a little too seasoned for him and a little bigger too. And I've got him winning the fight on the feet, again, via finish. Navo Sterling made his UFC debut a few months ago against George Tuco Tokos. It wasn't a great fight. It wasn't a great look. He definitely was expected to look better, but he still got a decision victory, which is not a bad look for him. He's only got two of them in his short career, but it's good for him to get long fights like that. His first decision victory was actually a 5-rounder, which is always good. But yeah, here he's fighting another guy who's got experience on him, probably has advantages over him, but I know Navajo's got an advantage over Ivan, and I think that's going to be the advantage that settles the fight. So Navo Sterling winning by knockout is the pick. Of course, if I'm wrong about the knockout, I still think he does better on the feet with his striking. Next up, we have Iwan Cutelaba versus Modestas Bukauskas. My prediction here is Bukauskas wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by decision, even though a finish is possible. But really, a finish is possible for either guy, which I'll get to. But I am going with Bukauskas. I'm going with Bukauskas, and the basis for the prediction is I know he's bigger. I think he moves well on his feet. He's comfortable on his back foot. And I think he's going to make it difficult for Iwan Cutelaba to corral him for either a takedown or a big shot. And even if he should get in on him, get in tight and try to take him down, which I know he can, Bukauskas is strong. He's stronger than I've given him credit for in the past. Every time I see him, I'm like, this guy's big and fucking strong. And I do think he's going to be tough to just go through or even control. And look, both guys are better than meets the eye on the ground. Bukauskas got a nice arm triangle choke in round 3, no less, against Marcin Prachnio. And Iwan Cutelaba, he's mixed it up throughout his career, but he's coming off a nice arm triangle choke himself over Ibo Aslan. But I do think the guy that's going to be hunting for the ground control in the ground fight is Iwan Cutelaba. So even though I think Bukauskas is big, strong, and could do well on top, I think the points on the ground are there to be scored from Iwan Cutelaba. And on the feet, it's not like Iwan's out of that fight either. But I do favor Bukauskas there, and I think he'll be able to keep most of the fight there. And again, he's a physical guy. I think he can handle himself in the clinch and the rest of it. But yeah, at range, I favor Bukauskas. He's the bigger, longer, taller guy. And I like his movement. I like his style. I think he's really comfortable fighting 15 hard minutes with more movement than Cutelaba. And even though I favor Cutelaba punch for punch with the power, and I have doubts about, frankly, both guys' chins, but especially Bukauskas's, I think, again, in general, with his physical advantages and his style, he'll be able to keep himself safe from that big knockout blow from Cutelaba. And I've got Bukauskas winning this fight. Winning this fight again at range, but also by being greater physical force than I've given him credit for in the past. Bukauskas has been knocked out a few times. He was knocked out by John Redman and Jimmy Crute in the same fashion, pretty much, and then knocked out a year and a half ago against Vitor Petrino with a big fucking hook. So I'm not saying he's got a weak chin, but I'm saying it's the first thing you'll hear me mention when it comes to weaknesses. And it's a thing moving forward, a problem moving forward, and it could be a problem here. But I'm still picking him to keep himself safe here and not make that big of a thing. Cutelaba's also been knocked out. Magomed Ankalaev knocked him out once and a half, maybe twice, depending on who you ask. And he was also knocked out against Kennedy and Nzechukwu, who outlasted him and caught him with a flying knee in round 2. It can happen with Iwan too. But I think his chin is in better shape against Bukauskas. And I also think it'll be in better shape standing up to the danger of Modestas Bukauskas as opposed to Magomed Ankalaev or a flying knee from Kennedy. So I don't think, even though, it could be a problem for him moving forward, I think it's not so much a threat in this matchup. I think his primary path to defeat is a decision. Even though if Modestas Bukauskas can outlast him and outwork him, anything's possible down the stretch. But yeah, and both guys have been submitted. Iwan's been submitted much more, in fact, but to a better class of fighter, most of them in the UFC. And again, I don't know who wins the grappling match if these two guys step on the grappling mat, but in MMA, a lot of it comes down to who's getting on top. And Iwan Cutelaba, I expect to be the takedown hunter here. So I've got him winning whatever points there are to be won on the ground. But yeah, it's still going to be a close fight, competitive fight, but I'm going with Bukauskas. I like the way he's looked lately. I trust him in a 15-minute fight. And I think if he keeps his chin safe, he gets the better of Iwan Cutelaba, even if he does get taken down, as long as it's not for the whole fight. But yeah, Bukauskas is the pick. Next up, we have Jessica Andrade versus Jasmine Jasudavicius. My prediction here is Jasmine Jasudavicius wins, and I've got her winning by finish. I think she's going to close the show with a finish. I'm going to take it, I guess, being by submission. Seems a little more likely than TKO, but of course, a jiu-jitsu TKO, crucifix type of finish is always possible. Not that Jessica has bad jiu-jitsu, but I just think Jasmine is a problem on top of her. Maybe not at first, but I think if she can take her down early, lay that long frame across her and wear her down, maybe return her to the mat a few times. But I think Jasmine getting on top of her will eventually be a big problem for her. I know how to say that word, eventually. I know how to spell it as well. But yeah, I've got Jasmine winning. Jessica could totally next level her. It is a thing where you look at Jasmine's record and go, where would I place Andrade here? She's closer to the losses than the wins or whatever. But I still think Jasmine is surging right now. And even though Jessica is still young at 33 years old, she's got a lot more mileage on her than Jasmine. And Jasmine's the girl that's surging and looks like she's hitting her prime with all of her skills. And I think she's going to be able to put it together and get Jessica to the mat. And on top, she's a monster, Jasmine Jasudavicius. I think she'll at the very least hold Andrade down, but at the very most, wear her down and get a finish. Of course, if she doesn't get her down, she's in trouble because Jessica Andrade hits like a man, like Chad Mendez. And Jasmine, despite having 2 feet in height and reach and the rest of it, she's still, and her striking is coming along. Definitely looks pretty at times, but she's still, I think, going to run into trouble there. I think Andrade just keeps coming. She's been stopped a few times, Andrade, a bunch, but on the feet, she's been knocked out a few times. Wei Li Zhang, Yan Xiaonan, somewhat recently. But I do think she'll be able to go through the power of Jasmine and not fear it and walk forward and be Jessica Andrade, the hunter that she's been in the past. And that could be a lot of trouble. Obviously, that could be trouble for anybody. But yeah, Jasmine, I think, would find herself in trouble before long if she's not able to ragdoll Jessica Andrade like I expect her to be able to. Uh, Not that she's gonna fucking toss her around like a pizza, but I think she's gonna be the bully in there with the wrestling. So I'm going with Jasudavicius. I've got her winning by finish just because I've put that in my head. So now that's the story. But yeah, I definitely expect her to win. It's all about those takedowns, and I expect her to get Andrade down. And from there, I've got her advancing to a finish. Next up, we have Mike Malott versus Charlie Radtke. My prediction here is Malott wins. And I'm going to go with him winning by decision, I guess, or maybe a body shot. Because that's how Radtke has lost. He's lost twice by decision and twice by body shot. He was knocked out by Carlos Prates last year and knocked out by Justin Montalvo, Long Islander, 4 years ago. He got him out of there with a knee to the punch to the body in round two, and that was a fight where Radtke was doing well, had a lot of good control, and then slipped a little bit in round two and got hit with a deadly shot and taken out. But regardless of all that context, it's a body shot that knocked him out. And that's the headline here. He's been knocked out twice, and they're both body shots. So if Mike Malott and his team have been paying attention, they'll be looking to hunt the body. His other two losses are by decision. He lost to Austin Hubbard in a fairly close fight. It was like a glorified sparring match, but Hubbard won. Hubbard's a good point fighter. And he also lost to another good fighter, Chris Gonzalez, who beat him by decision in Bellator. And Charlie Radtke was the last man standing in that fight after taking it for most of the fight. Mike Malott, got a record of 11-2. His two losses are both TKOs. He lost down at 145 10, 11 years ago, getting knocked out against Hakeem Dawodu, who I think is still in the UFC. I don't know. He lost a few times, but just haven't seen him in a while. And he lost to Neil Magny last year, getting outlasted. He was dominating Neil Magny, looked really good in that fight over what I think was a ranked fighter, and then just collapsed in the end. Neil took it to him in the final minute, 2 minutes, and was able to close the show with 15 seconds left. TKO'd him from the top. So that was a big loss for Mike Malott because he was so close to winning it, and it was a total cardio collapse. No other explanation that you could even speculate on. But cardio would be his big weakness because cardio's also cost him another victory in the form of a draw. He got a draw when he was over in Bellator against this guy, Usman Thomas, whatever the fuck. And that guy outlasted him. Mike Malott had a strong start and then gassed out and ended up coasting to a draw. But yeah, I think there's something there with Mike Malott. He doesn't have the most depth on his record. He took a long layoff and then came back, and pretty much he's been a UFC fighter for the second stint of his career, and we've seen everything there is. And he definitely. I'd like to see him answer more questions getting dragged into deep waters. And I'm not talking about something like the Giles fight, which I did think he looked good over the course of 15 minutes. And I thought he was the better man in the end. But I think there's still something there. Mike Malott's got to answer those questions about his cardio. Radtke's a really well-rounded guy, just like Malott. So if Mike Malott does get tired, Radtke can give him something everywhere. He's got a really sharp left hook, which is probably the best single weapon in this strike, in this fight. And on the ground, I think Radtke's in trouble against Mike Malott when they're fresh because Malott is awesome, but Charlie Radtke's really good on the ground as well. And he might have the wrestling to give Mike Malott fits and make that whole ground game thing a little more difficult for him. So I think Radtke is in this fight, definitely, but I've got Mike Malott winning. Mike Malott's pretty sharp on the feet as well. Mike Malott does have the hometown crowd, which is not nothing. May not be everything, but it's certainly not nothing. They're going to be cheering every strike of his. And Mike Malott is also, I think, just when he's fresh, the more technical fighter. On the ground, he's a monster. And on the feet, he's very sharp as well. So I think he watches that left hook, maybe hunts the body. And I think if he does get control time over Radtke, his will mean a lot more. He'll do a lot more with it, whether it's securing a position or going for a sub and trying to rip a limb off or something. But I just like Mike Malott in this fight. So Mike Malott is the pick, and I haven't bet on him yet, but I'll see. Next up, we have Benoit Saint-Denis taking on Kyle Prepole, who is making his return to the UFC after 5 or 6 years. My prediction for this fight is Benoit Saint-Denis wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by submission in round 2. And the basis for the prediction is Kyle Prepole. I mean, I'd be picking against him here even on a full camp, but he's a guy who's rarely been finished. He's only ever been finished twice, and they're by submission, and they're 10 years ago, over a decade ago. But I still think this is a very tough matchup, and Benoit Saint-Denis, one of the best fighters, and Benoit's a bona fide finisher. And I think, of course, he's in much better shape. At least I expect him to be. He's the guy who's was preparing for a UFC fight against Joel Alvarez. And I think after he wears down Kyle a little bit, I think Benoit will be able to overwhelm him and get a finish. Plus, Benoit Saint-Denis doesn't really know how to win a decision. He's a monstrous finisher. So yeah, but I do think Kyle Prepole is a good fighter for sure, former UFC guy, and he's been doing well since. And he's also very durable. He's only ever been finished twice, again, both by submission, and they're both over a decade ago. But his losses in the UFC were since then, and they were both by decision. He lost to Austin Hubbard and Nordine Taleb. Hubbard is now back in the UFC, but he was able to outpoint and out-wrestle, really, Kyle Prepole. And Nordine Taleb, who was a very good fighter, was able to outstrike him. Prepole wasn't totally out of the fight. He made some things happen there, but in general, it was clear he lost every round, and he was a step behind, really, throughout most of the fight. His only loss since then is another decision to another UFC fighter, Shane Campbell. So no shame there. And then he's gotten 3 nice round 1 finishes since. But there are still levels to this, if I could sound like some douchebag. And I am a douchebag, so whatever. But there are levels to this, and I think coming in to really any UFC fight on short notice here would show him those levels. But Benoit Saint Denis, especially being as violent and as strong of a finisher as he is, I think it's going to be a bad night for Kyle. Benoit Saint Denis doesn't exactly have momentum on his side, though. He lost twice, somewhat recently. He was knocked out last year against Dustin Poirier, where I picked him to win because I'm a douchebag. But Poirier was able to outlast him, take what he had to offer, and then just took it to him in round two. Had him hurt for a good minute or two before just knocking him on his ass and taking him out with a big right hand, I believe. Uh, but I do think since then, his one loss to Moicano was, I don't know. It was an ass kicking, but at the same time, I'm not sure how that fight would have looked if it was allowed to continue. I think Benoit Saint Denis was looking pretty good in that fight. And I think that there's a chance he took the only ass kicking he was going to get in that fight in round one, where Moicano was able to get on top of him and maul him, doing what Moicano does best. But Saint Denis was able to survive, take his ground and pound, and resist the choke. And then on the feet, he looked like he was getting back into it, even though he was fucking busted up. I liked the way he looked in the end of that fight. But of course, the end was round two because the doctor stopped it between rounds 2 and 3. So it is what it is. He was mauled there and goes down as a TKO loss. But I don't think it makes him look, I think it might make him look more fragile. But my estimation of his toughness after that fight only shot way up there, just like it did with his other loss to Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos, which is up at middleweight on short notice and the rest of it. But he got his ass kicked in that fight and he stood tall. So, despite getting finished twice in the last year, my estimation is of his toughness is still there. I think it's really fucking high. And I think, again, on the flip side, most guys don't have the toughness to withstand his danger. He's got 13 wins, 13 finishes, 4 by TKO, 9 by submission. And I think there might be an initial storm or something, or maybe he's just too good for the storm. But I think after overcoming a potential storm, Benoit Saint Denis is going to be too good at what he does, and he's going to be able to put away Kyle. And I've got it happening on the ground. I've got it by submission in round two, or whatever the fuck I said. But welcome back, Kyle. Takes balls, and part of me is rooting for you. And by the way, I should have said, I think Kyle's best chance of winning is knockout. I mean, I'd probably be saying that regardless of who he is and the circumstances under which he took the fight. But considering the circumstances and considering who he is and considering the recent loss against Poirier, my pick for an upset would be him winning by knockout, catching Benoit cold with power and taking him out. Maybe something dynamic. Kyle Prepole's got some snappy high kicks and he's got some spinning shit. He's got some nice finishes on his record. But again, I'm thinking this is a step up and I'm going with Benoit. Next up, we have Natalia Silva versus Alexa Grasso. My prediction here is Natalia Silva wins, and I've got her winning by decision. And the basis for the prediction is I think she's just a little sharper on the feet. At range, of course, and with her kicks. I do think Alexa Grasso is sharper in the pocket, though. She's really comfortable. She's got excellent boxing and excellent speed. But I do think Natalia Silva moves around well. She's a sharp athlete. And of course, at kicking range, she can do her thing. And I think on the ground, uh, either girl, I think, could stand to gain from a takedown here, but Natalia Silva, I think, is going to be really tough to take down. Physically, it looks like it'd be tough in in the second place, I should say, but in the first place, you got to corner her, and I think she's going to make that difficult. But Alexa Grasso is the girl that strangled Valentina, and she's definitely a well-rounded fighter. As is Natalia Silva. She can work on the ground as well, we've seen. But I still think this fight is going to largely be contested on the feet. And even though it's close there, I still have Natalia Silva winning. She's looked phenomenal since hitting the UFC and even before coming to the UFC. She's got 5 losses. She's been finished a few times, but they're all when she was a fucking teenager, pretty much. Her only one loss in the last decade or so, or whatever, is to Marina Rodriguez, who just retired a few days ago. But this was before Marina got to the UFC, obviously. So she was a lot sharper back then. And yeah, Natalia Silva was able to take it, but that's what she mostly did in that fight. She took it and lost a decision. But my point is, after being finished a bunch early in her career and having her most recent loss be to a girl that could have been challenging for a UFC title and not losing by finish, I think that does show her progress there and her maturity. And if that doesn't, the fucking 15 fight winning streak or whatever she's been on since then, that might do it. But she's won plenty of fights by finish, plenty by decision. She knows how to fight long and short on the ground. We've seen her with Teresa Blade on top of her. We've seen her mix it up with takedowns against Jasmine Jasudavicius, even taking her down. And I just think Natalia Silva is looking really sharp right now, where I don't think Alexa Grasso is going to be able to slow the fight down with any real grappling. And on the feet, even though Grasso is phenomenal, I just think Natalia Silva is a little bit better. So I'm going with Natalia Silva. I'm taking her to win, keeping out of that pocket and keeping the fight at her range, at least for the majority of the fight. But yeah, Natalia Silva is the pick. Next up, we have Jose Aldo versus Amin Zahabi. My prediction here is Jose Aldo wins, and I've got him winning by decision. And I'm not too confident in that prediction because Jose Aldo is older, even though Amin Zahabi is only like a year younger. But with the mileage, Jose Aldo is definitely older. And between Amin Zahabi having the hometown crowd in Canada and Jose Aldo's knack for taking off and coasting here and there in the middle of fights, I do worry about a decision, which is what I expect here in this fight. I expect it to go the distance. That's the prediction, really. But I am going with Jose Aldo. I think without too much coasting, his technical skills should carry him to a victory. I think Eamon Zahabi's got a big power overhand. And I think Jose Aldo, this is going to be another fight where we don't see his kicks like we used to. I think that's just part of his age. At least not to a huge effect. We won't see his kicks in this fight. But I still think Jose Aldo, he's still one of the better fighters in the world today. May not be a tippy top fighter, but he's still looking pretty sharp. You could argue he beat Mario Batista, even though you could argue that fight never happened, and I wouldn't disagree with you. But you you can't argue that Jonathan Martinez beat Aldo before that. He next leveled Jonathan Martinez, and that was just last year. So I still think in general Jose Aldo is a very formidable fighter, and I've got him being a little too much, a little too fast. Really would be the story here against Eamon Zahabi, and that is when Jose Aldo chooses to be fast because he can sit and wait a little bit. But I think Aldo, he's as seasoned as it gets, and I'm sure he knows his body well, how to manage his energy and whatever. But I think he'll keep himself safe at the very least here, and I've got him outpointing Eamon Zahabi. I think this will largely be contested on the feet, as I'm sure you think as well. And even though Eamon Zahabi is a very formidable fighter on the feet, and both guys have been knocked out, I should mention, but I'm not predicting a knockout here. But in a points battle, even though Eamon Zahabi has proven to be tough to beat in that regard, I think Jose Aldo is just going to be the better guy there. So Aldo is the pick. I've got him winning by decision, and he's a solid 2-1 or close enough favorite, and I have not bet on him. I don't see the value, and I am too scared to put my money down. maybe a plus point situation. I don't know, but right now it's just the over under and the money line. I do not like either bet, and the over under is what is it, 4-1 here? The over under is almost 4-1. Yeah, minus 360 over 2.5 rounds. I'm pretty sure it goes the distance, but that's not enticing me. So whatever. And in the co-main event, we have Manon Fior challenging Valentina Shevchenko for her flyweight championship. My prediction here is Manon Fior wins, as much as I hate to say it. I've got to go with Fior. I think she's looking incredible, and I think she is a beast, just like her nickname says. And in a battle between two really sharp strikers, both southpaws, I think that right hand, the lead right hand of Manon Fior, is the best weapon. It's the most powerful. She uses it very well. And she's got a nice long jab with it, but also a really good hook. And even though Valentina has maybe perhaps sharper striking and faster strikes, I think Manon Fior hits a little harder, and Manon moves well, where it's going to be tough for Valentina to time her like other fighters. She's a big, strong, fast girl, and she's also a tough girl to take down, Manon Fior. Manon Fior, she's a beast. And even though Valentina is really good with taking girls down, Valentina, she's again so fast herself that when she mixes things up, a lot of times she's in on a body lock before you even know she's looking to take you down. And she's really fucking strong and tight. And I do think with her speed and getting in tight on Manon Fior by surprise, she can take her down. But in general, I think Manon Fior is going to be a lot tougher to bully around in tight. She's a physical force herself, and she's got height and reach and leverage and all that on her side. And I think in general, this one is largely contested on the feet. And it's not like Manon Fior is perfect there. You know, we've seen Rose Namajunas get off on her. And I think Erin Blanchfield might have landed a strike or two in the 25 minutes. Now, that was, a very good performance from Manon Fior, but she's definitely she's going to be touched in this fight by Valentina. I think Valentina's really sharp. She's going to be waiting with those counters, and Manon Fior is not going to be cruising like she was doing pretty quickly against Erin Blanchfield. I think this will be closer to a like the Rose Namajunas type of fight, where even if she wins, it's going to be very competitive. And look, Valentina's an underdog. Me as a gambler, I see that and I want to bet on her, and I just might. No, I'm not gonna. I'm picking Manon Fior to win. Maybe I'll find a way to mix some point spread horseshit and find a way to bet on Valentina. But I am gun to my head picking Manon Fior to win. Valentina Shevchenko, if she was to lose here, I think it's got to be by decision. She's never been knocked out legitimately, and the only girl to ever submit her is Alexa Grasso. Not saying it can't happen, but I don't think that's Manon Fior doing that. And on the flip side, Manon Fior has never been finished as a pro. She was submitted as an amateur way back when. So, yeah, I guess Valentina is so good she can get her. But I would expect if Valentina was to beat Manon Fior, it would be by decision as well. And I think Valentina, she can win anywhere. She's Valentina. She can win this fight purely on the feet just by being the sharper striker and meeting her with sharp counters anytime Manor tries to come crashing in. But I think Valentina's best course is taking her to the mat, using that speed to land a few counters, but all as a means to landing a counter takedown, where Valentina is really fucking strong. And I think Valentina, she's shown recently in her trilogy with Alexa Grasso that she still got some takedowns in her, and the more she lands, the more dominant she is, as she dominated Grasso in the last fight, the rubber match. But yeah, Valentina, she's still on top. I almost feel guilty picking against her because I know how good she is, but I think Manon Fior is a big problem. And at the very least, if Manon Fiorot should lose this fight, I still expect her to be competitive and win rounds against Valentina. But again, we're not talking rounds here. We're talking prediction. Who's going to win the fight? Go ahead, Al Dente. And I'm going with Manon Fiorot. And in the main event of the evening, we have Belal Muhammad defending his welterweight title against Jack Della Maddalena. My prediction here is Belal wins. I've got to go with him winning, and it's going to be by decision. And the basis for the prediction is I think he can get Jack Della Maddalena down. I think he can do it more than once, and I think he's going to need to win. I think Jack Della Maddalena is incredibly deadly, and he's deadly in a way that Leon Edwards is not. He's ferocious, he's an animal, and he's always going to be hunting Belal in this fight. He showed that in the Gilbert Burns fight, where with the smallest of windows, he ended the fight with a big knee after kicking himself out of a ground position there. And I think that's really his only path to victory, Jack Della Maddalena, winning by knockout. If Belal Muhammad was more submittable, maybe that would be more of an option. And of course, for him to win by decision, I do think it's kind of like I said about Ian Gary versus Carlos Prates. Prates to win by decision would need to kill Ian Gary or have him nearly killed on multiple occasions. That's how I think Jack Della Maddalena would need to win this fight. I think the positional battle is going to be won by Belal. And if it's a grappling heavy fight, then position is everything. And that's going to rack up the most points. Belal Muhammad, he's been knocked out once by Vicente Luque. So you know it can happen. But that's the only time he's ever been knocked out. And of course, he rematched Vicente Luque for whatever that's worth and dominated him or beat him for a large portion of a 5-round fight. And he stood up in defeat to Jeff Neal and Alan Jouban, but more so Jeff Neal. That was a real beating for Belal Muhammad, but he showed a real chin in that fight, if nothing else, and a lot of heart as well. He was still fighting in round 3, fighting hard, but definitely a step and a half behind there. But my point is, as far as his toughness, it's there. He's always had grit, and he showed that going back to his Alan Jouban fight, his UFC debut, and even before that on the regional scene. But yeah, Belal Muhammad's always had grit, which you need cardio and durability and tenacity to have grit. But his chin is definitely, it's been there for him throughout his career, and I think that's the biggest thing against Jack Della Maddalena. For Jack, I don't want to harp on his 2 losses because they are in his first 2 fights, but he was finished, TKO'd and submitted, and they were both on the ground, both against good, if not really good fighters. And again, in his first 2 fights, where he could have lost to really shitty fighters, and I'd kind of be dismissing the losses in the same way. But they were down the stretch to beasts, at least one of them was. But he hasn't been defeated since. He's been on a killer winning streak, whatever, a 17-fight winning streak, a good chunk of that in the UFC now. And he's been tested a bunch in the UFC, but always passed the test. You got to look to his fights with Basel Hafez and, of course, Gilbert Burns. Both guys were able to get him down. And Belal Muhammad's really good at getting fighters down. He's a lot more technical as opposed to just running after you like Basel Hafez did. But I do think Belal Muhammad will be able to get him down. As for Belal's chances of getting a finish, overwhelming him down the stretch is always possible. But even in a 5-round fight with an extra 10 whole minutes to work, I still think decision is much more likely for Belal Muhammad. I think he'll be trying to slow the fight down and control Jack and mitigate scrambles and the situations that led to the Gilbert Burns comeback. But yeah, I think Belal Muhammad knows who he is. He knows his advantages in this fight, and he knows his one path to defeat. So I've got Belal using his striking, which is very technical and very solid, but using it to get inside, get in on the hips of Jack Della Maddalena, corner him, get in on him, And I'm looking for Jack to land some strikes up the middle. I think he's going to try to scare the takedown away from Belal. But I still think Belal is going to be advancing on him with the striking until he can get in on his hips. I don't think he's going to finish Jack, like I said. And in every moment after the takedown is settled, once they hop back on the feet, I think Jack's going to be an animal. And in those little moments, he's going to have windows to close the show and get a finish. But I'm still picking Bilal Muhammad to outwork Jack Della Maddalena, to return him to the mat after some dicey moments, and to ultimately win a 5-round decision. Bilal Muhammad is the pick. His money line is getting lower as I speak. It's under 2-1 now, which is pretty. But I still haven't struck on it because, of course, I think decision is far and away his best path to victory. And if it was a finish, it would be a longer fight anyway. So I'll wait for all the props and see if and when and how I'll play Bilal Muhammad. But Bilal Muhammad is the pick. And like I said, if I'm looking to play Jack Della Maddalena, uh, it'll be by knockout because that's his path to victory far and away. But yeah, the pick is Bilal. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit, and check out my other videos.